don't think he carried the alcoholism all the way through. And so that was something he had to figure out and battle very early on, before he even started the McAfee and Associates, to then see the success he did. I think he had to process it, and that was like a lot of time processing, and that was during those early years. And so, I don't know, like, calling out his like early childhood, I think there are some great points in it in terms of like his brilliance is shining through, but then there's also a lot of like trauma. So that's how I was reading his childhood.
Yeah, it's definitely something that stuck with him. One thing that he said is, every day I wake up next to him, and he meant that in the psychology. He meant that psychologically, that he always had that. His father was always in his mental, his psyche, his mind. So I guess moving along a little bit is he basically learned we can just kind of step through, because that just might be the easiest way to move through it. But in where is it? So he went to Roanoke College in Salem, Virginia. That's where he got his bachelor's degree in mathematics.
Yeah.
And he later got a doctorate in science there, an honorary one. He claimed to have received a PhD from Northeast Louisiana State, but it was later disputed to be another honorary one. He worked at a punch card coding firm, learning the basics of computing early on. And he worked for the Missouri Pacific Railroad, routing train schedules. And this is interesting because he used to do acid every day and drive acid every day.
That's right.
And this was in the 60s, so I guess it checks out with the time period.
The times, yeah.
And he was routing these trains all day. At one point, he said he had snorted an entire bag of DMT in his office and developed such severe paranoia, he believed his coworkers were trying to kill him.
Yeah.
In his 20s.
Which is also another thing with, like, people actually trying to kill him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not something that goes away. But, yeah, DMT just in the office.
Yeah.
Just openly. That's wild. He did have like that software background, I know, and so we can even skip to like how he was discovering those viruses if you want.
Yeah, man, go ahead.
I feel like that's like a really key part, because I mean that's how he got all his money too.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these things were at the first invention of the computer. You know, it wasn't like we have it today where there's Windows Defender and some of these other programs that you would rely on out of the box. A lot of these computers were just like a node in a network, and you'd come in with your floppy drive and you'd plug in the floppy disk, run your program, and then you'd take the floppy disk out when you left. And so everybody had like, you know, their own personal floppy disks. We'd run your programs.
I don't think some people know what a floppy disk is.
A floppy disk is the precursor to the CD. So most people know what like a CD is. Yeah. Floppy disk was right before that, and it was.
Floppy disk wasn't like, well, it wasn't floppy with the hard covering.
Yeah. It was a square. It's one of those square, and it's actually, if you're on almost any website, it's the save icon. Yeah. It's the square save icon that most websites have. Yeah. Yeah, you used to have to. It was a hard, and they made them in two sizes. They were squares, and you have to plug them into push them into the computer, where it would read the film. There was some film inside the hard casing, and it basically lets you read and write programs. Very basic. And so, because everyone had like their own personal programs on their own personal floppy disks, you basically had your programs with you wherever you went, but you needed a computer to run them. So you'd plug in the disk and run your programs. There was software that was started in Pakistan, I believe, by these two brothers who were selling software for enterprises, and they built a way in the boot menu, right? So when the software boots up, it talks to the computer, hey, I need this memory, I need to do this, I need to do this. They wrote some code at that sequence to tell the computer, hey, don't run your normal program, run this one instead. And basically what it did was it overwrote the entire boot sequence for the computer, and it would install a note that said like, this software is built by the two brothers' names, with basically a signature. And it would stay dormant on the PC, and every time you plugged in a floppy disk, it would copy itself to that new floppy disk. And so that first virus was called the brain virus, and it didn't do anything except for self-replicate. That's all it did. And the reason that it was built was so that they could find people that were using their enterprise software for free. So that's how it started. It eventually got to the United States, where John McAfee was able to dissect the program and figure out how it worked. For anyone who's technical out there, it actually uses interrupts, and it interrupts the interrupt. It's very interesting the way that they were able to figure this out. And there weren't any protections on this level of the computing at this stage in the game. And so, yeah, he was able to figure out how it worked, figure out how it self-replicated itself, and in doing that, he was also able to break down, oh, this is where I can stop it. This is how it's doing this. And so, you know, if I can write a program that says, if there's any code on your computer that's looking for an interrupt, that's gonna be malicious code. And so then I can just tell you, hey, I found this malicious code in this file. You might want to check this download just to make sure that, you know, this is exactly what you thought it was going to be, because there's no reason that this program should be messing with these interrupts, because that's like lower level system stuff. So that is like a really interesting way of like getting into the lab, finding out how things work, and then immediately going, oh, if that's how it works, this is how I can stop it. And that was like the genesis of McAfee and Associates. I think that's really interesting
I think it's really interesting that being his jump off point, because you were talking about this a little bit earlier, how he was early to the party, a few months early to the party, and that gave him such a head start.
Yeah, I mean, antivirus itself was just becoming a thing. You know, it was just barely early enough for him to make a name for himself, I think. And I think that's huge. Yeah. That first mover advantage. If you can launch early enough where you become the de facto, I guess, the de facto person in the area for like that specific thing, I think you get a lot of credit for that.
I wonder how much of the whole spreading of the virus was, or the spreading of his antivirus software was intentional versus casual, because I heard him tell the story of it being more, hey, I saw this problem, I wanted to fix it, I posted it on this, you know, this board, and people downloaded it and it spread.